My brother slept with my girlfriend while I was at my dad's funeral, so I sent screenshots to everyone and left them to explain themselves. I'm a 24-year-old guy, and I swear my life fell apart in the span of a single week. My dad had been sick for months, fighting a battle with cancer that we all knew he was losing. I tried to prepare myself for the day it would finally happen, but when the call came, I still wasn't ready. The world just went quiet. It felt like someone had ripped the ground out from beneath me, and all I could do was sit there staring at my phone, numb. My girlfriend was the one who held me that night. She whispered, "I've got you, I'm not going anywhere." And I believed her. I clung to her as if she was the only solid thing left in my life. My brother, on the other hand, barely looked at me when I broke the news. He said, "Yeah, tough break, man," like I just told him I lost my wallet. That was my brother, though. He'd always been the golden child, the one my mom praised no matter what he did, while I was the afterthought. The day of the funeral felt like moving through fog. The church was cold, full of whispered condolences and the faint smell of old wood and flowers. I remember staring at my father's casket, trying to etch every detail of that moment into my memory, because it was the last piece of him I would ever see. My girlfriend squeezed my hand the entire time, her thumb brushing against my skin like a lifeline. For a second I thought maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely alone in this world. But what I didn't realize then was that while I was saying goodbye to my dad, something far darker was already unfolding behind my back. The funeral itself is a blur in my memory, but certain moments stand out in sharp, painful detail. I can still hear the echo of the organ, slow and heavy, rattling in my chest like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. The pews creaked when people shifted, the air thick with the smell of lilies and the faint cologne of relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone wore the same expression, sad but distant, like they couldn't wait for it to be over. I sat in the front row, my girlfriend by my side, her arm hooked around mine. She leaned in every now and then to whisper things like, "You're doing great," or "Just breathe." Those little reassurances kept me upright when all I wanted was to collapse. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have her, that in the worst moment of my life, she was there. But my brother, he was different. He kept glancing at his phone, slipping out of the service twice, once during the eulogy and once while they lowered the casket. At first I thought he was just avoiding the pain in his own way. Grief makes people act strange, right? Still, I caught myself wondering, why isn't he here with me? Why does it feel like he's somewhere else entirely? At one point, I looked around for him during the prayer and he was gone. Just gone. Meanwhile, my girlfriend squeezed my hand tighter, her nails digging into my skin as if trying to ground me. I leaned on her, grateful, and forced myself to focus back on the casket. I told myself my brother would come back, that I couldn't afford to care about his behavior right then. But in hindsight, that was the first crack in the mask. He wasn't just slipping away to grieve on his own. He was slipping away for something far more disgusting. The days after the funeral were some of the darkest of my life. I'd wake up and forget for a split second that my dad was gone, then the reality would hit me like a punch to the gut. My girlfriend used to be the first person I called when things got heavy, but suddenly she wasn't there in the same way. Her texts grew shorter, just okay or busy RN, and the warmth in her voice over the phone had cooled into something mechanical. I tried to brush it off as her way of coping. Maybe she didn't know how to handle my grief. But the timing felt off. The more I needed her, the less she showed up. And then there was my brother. Out of nowhere, he started checking in on me, asking if I was eating or if I needed help with errands. For a guy who couldn't even sit still at Dad's funeral, his sudden compassion didn't sit right. I remember one night, I texted my girlfriend, "Can you come over? I just don't want to be alone tonight." She replied 3 hours later, "Sorry, with a friend." "Talk tomorrow." That word, friend, burned into my chest. I wanted to believe her, but something in my gut twisted. Meanwhile, my brother started hanging around the house more often. He'd make jokes about how Mom still called him her rock, even though he barely lifted a finger to help. I laughed it off, but inside, it reminded me of every time I'd been overlooked, every time he got praised while I got ignored. And now it felt like he was circling me, waiting for something. I told myself I was just paranoid, that grief was making me see shadows where there weren't any. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the people closest to me were slipping further away, and that something ugly was lurking just beneath the surface. It was about a week after the funeral, when the ground gave out beneath me for the second time. I was sitting in my room staring at an old photo of my dad when my phone buzzed. The message came from a mutual friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in a while. All it said was, "I don't know how to tell you this, but you need to see it." Attached were screenshots. At first, my brain refused to process what I was looking at. It was my girlfriend's name at the top of the thread, and right below it, my brother's. The texts weren't vague. They weren't innocent. They were full of late-night messages, flirting, even plans to meet up. One line made me drop my phone. "Can't believe we snuck away during the service." He never even noticed. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break my ribs.
I picked up the phone again, scrolling through each message, my vision blurring with tears.
My girlfriend, the person who swore she wouldn't leave me, and my brother, the one who always found a way to make me feel less than, had been together while I was burying my father. While I was standing at the casket, clutching her hand, thinking she was my anchor, she was already betraying me. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so violently I dropped the phone twice. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to erase every word from existence. Instead, I just sat there in the dark, the glow of the screen burning those messages into my skull. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling, my chest hollow, wondering how much of my life had been a lie. And deep down, I already knew this wasn't some one-time mistake. There was more I hadn't uncovered yet. The morning after I found those texts, I convinced myself it had to be a one-time thing. Maybe it was just grief, weakness, some twisted moment they'd regret forever. That thought was the only thing that kept me from completely unraveling. But then I made the mistake of digging deeper. I went back through my girlfriend's old messages, the ones she'd forgotten to delete on her tablet that she sometimes left at my place. And there it was, thread after thread, stretching back weeks before my dad's funeral. Plans to meet up when I was at work, pet names they'd given each other, pictures I can't erase from my mind no matter how hard I try. My chest felt like it was caving in. This wasn't grief-driven weakness. This was a relationship. My girlfriend and my brother hadn't just betrayed me in the worst moment of my life. They'd been carrying on behind my back for who knows how long. All those nights she said she was with friends. All those times my brother mysteriously disappeared. Suddenly, it all made sense, and the puzzle came together in the ugliest way imaginable. I slammed the tablet shut, my hands trembling. Rage burned hotter than the grief ever had. I wanted to call them right then, to scream until my throat bled. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat there, frozen, replaying every moment in my head, like my brain was torturing me with a highlight reel of lies. The worst part? I could still hear her voice in my head from the funeral. "I'm not going anywhere." Except she already had. With him, and that's when something inside me shifted. I wasn't just the grieving son anymore. I was the fool they thought they could play forever. And I knew I couldn't stay silent much longer. After reading those messages, I couldn't look at either of them the same way again. Every call from my girlfriend felt like nails on a chalkboard. Every text from my brother made my stomach churn. I started dodging them both, letting their calls go to voicemail, giving one-word replies. I needed time to think, to breathe, to figure out what the hell I was going to do with the truth I now carried like a grenade in my chest. For nights, I paced my room in silence. Sometimes I drafted long, furious messages, pages of rage where I called them every name under the sun, only to delete them seconds later. Other times I'd open the screenshots, stare at them until my vision blurred, and imagine the look on their faces if the world saw them too. I kept asking myself, do I want revenge, or do I just want to hurt as much as they hurt me? My mother always said I was too soft, that I let people walk all over me while my brother took what he wanted. And maybe she was right, because here I was, sitting in the ruins of my life, still second-guessing if I had the right to fight back. But every time I thought of my dad's casket, of the way they chose that exact day to betray me, my hesitation melted into fury. I started collecting everything, screenshots, texts, even timestamps that proved where I was when they were together. I built a case like I was preparing for court, each piece of evidence heavier than the last. And then it hit me. I didn't want a private confrontation. I wanted everyone to see who they really were. If they wanted to humiliate me in silence, I'd humiliate them in public. I just hadn't decided when to pull the trigger. After I decided I was done playing the quiet victim, something broke in me, but not in the way I expected. Instead of feeling vindicated, I felt hollow. The anger that had burned hot the week before turned into this cold, constant ache that settled behind my ribs. I stopped answering friends' texts, ignored calls, and let the world think I'd gone radio silent. The house felt enormous and empty. Every corner echoed with memories of Dad, and every laugh sounded like a lie. Mom noticed I was different, but interpreted it her way. "You need time," she said when I barely responded. She refused to believe my brother could do something like that. He was her golden child, after all. Her denial felt like another slap. "He'd never," she kept repeating, and each repetition made me feel more invisible, like my pain wasn't valid unless she agreed it existed. I tried to tell her how betrayed I felt. She patted my shoulder and said, "You'll get over it. Over it." Like grief and infidelity were interchangeable. Like I could flip a switch and be fine. One night, I found myself on the floor of my dad's study, surrounded by old photographs, and I started laughing and crying at the same time. I whispered into the dark, "Is this my life now? Losing him and then losing everything else?" The laughter was hollow. I thought about calling them both, about begging for answers, but even imagining their faces made bile rise in my throat. For the first time since all this started, I had a thought darker than anger. Maybe I didn't deserve better. Maybe I was always the spare. The idea lodged in my head and wouldn't leave. I scrolled through the messages again, looking for something I'd missed, a hint, a reason, anything human in their cruelty. My thumb froze on one line, a message I hadn't noticed before, and when I read it, my blood ran cold. It wasn't just betrayal. It was something else entirely. That single line in the messages haunted me. "He's too broken to ever suspect." They weren't just betraying me, they were mocking me, laughing at my grief while I was drowning in it. That's when something hardened inside me. I realized there was no fixing this, no confrontation that would make them admit their guilt with tears in their eyes. If they could do this to me in the shadow of my father's death, they didn't deserve even the courtesy of a private argument. So I started planning. Quietly, carefully, I gathered every screenshot, every timestamp, every damning word. I scrolled back months and months, piecing together their web of lies like a detective. Each file I saved felt like reclaiming a little piece of power they'd stolen from me, but power without action meant nothing. I remember sitting on my bed one night, the glow of my laptop washing my room in cold light, staring at the folder I'd labeled simply Truth. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might burst. My palms were slick with sweat, and my finger hovered over the screen like I was about to detonate a bomb. Because that's exactly what this was, a bomb that would obliterate everything. I opened the family group chat first. My thumb hovered over the attach file option. Then I thought about my dad. I thought about how disappointed he'd be that the son he tried to raise with honesty and integrity was being torn apart by betrayal. That thought made my decision easier. One by one, I dropped the screenshots into the chat. Not just to family, but to friends, extended relatives, everyone who had ever seen us together. My phone buzzed violently the second I hit send, a storm breaking loose on every screen connected to mine, and I knew. From that moment, none of us would ever be the same again. The second I hit send, my phone lit up like a slot machine on fire. Notifications poured in faster than I could read them. Pings from cousins, friends, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. The screenshots were out there now, no longer mine to hide or carry alone. For the first time since my dad's funeral, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. My brother was the first to call. The screen flashed his name over and over, but I couldn't bring myself to pick up. Then came my girlfriend. "Please, just talk to me," her text begged. Paragraph after paragraph about how it wasn't what it looked like. about how she was confused and needed me to understand. I stared at those words, bile rising in my throat. Confused? She was never confused while sneaking around behind my back. The family group chat was chaos. My aunt blasted them. "How could you do this while your brother was burying his father?" Another cousin chimed in. "This is disgusting. You two deserve each other." My mother, of course, jumped to my brother's defense. This isn't the time to air dirty laundry. He's still grieving too. That cut deeper than anything else. Even after everything, she still protected him. But the tide wasn't on his side anymore. Relatives who'd once sung his praises were furious. Old friends unfollowed him, blocked him, even sent me private messages of support. It was like I'd pulled the curtain back on the golden child, and everyone finally saw what I'd been living with for years. Meanwhile, I just sat there watching the explosion unfold. I didn't type a word, didn't try to control the narrative. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough on its own, and still, deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because eventually, silence wouldn't be enough. They'd come looking for me face to face. It didn't take long before the banging started. I was in my room when the front door rattled under my brother's fists. His voice echoed through the hall, sharp and desperate. "Open the door! We need to talk!" I froze, my chest tight, every muscle in my body screaming to stay hidden. But the pounding grew louder, relentless, until I finally walked out to face him. He stood there, red-faced, eyes wild, holding his phone like it was a weapon. "You ruined me," he spat. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I laughed bitterly. "What I've done? You slept with my girlfriend while I was at our dad's funeral." "Don't you dare act like the victim!" His jaw clenched. "It wasn't like that. She came to me because you were too wrapped up in yourself. You didn't see her needs." The audacity of it nearly knocked the breath out of me. Her needs? While I was lowering Dad into the ground? That's the excuse you're going with? My voice cracked, but not from weakness, pure rage. Then she showed up. My girlfriend, eyes puffy, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She reached for me, whispering, "Please just let me explain." I was lost. I didn't mean. I pulled back like her touch was fire. "Save it. You both made your choices. You wanted each other. You can have each other. Just don't you dare drag me into your mess." For the first time, I saw something crack in my brother's expression. Fear. The golden child, stripped of his shield, scrambling to explain the unforgivable. He tried again, softer this time. "We can fix this, man." "We're still family." I shook my head. My chest felt heavy but steady. "Family doesn't bury knives in your back." "You're nothing to me now." The silence after that was deafening. And in that silence, I realized the power had shifted. They had to explain themselves to the world now, not me. After that confrontation, everything changed. My brother stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. My girlfriend lingered on the porch, sobbing, begging me to just listen, but I closed the blinds and locked the door. That was the last time I saw her in person. The fallout spread quickly. Word traveled through the family like wildfire. Relatives who once praised my brother's every move now avoided him. A few even called me directly, saying things like, "You didn't deserve that, and I'm so sorry you went through this alone." For the first time, people saw him for what he really was, and in a twisted way. That gave me some relief, but the house felt emptier than ever. I'd lost my dad, my girlfriend, and now my brother in the span of weeks. Even though they were toxic, the void they left still ached. I found myself deleting photos, every smiling snapshot of her, every forced grin standing next to him. Each click of the delete button felt like peeling off another layer of skin, but it was necessary. My mom didn't make things easier. She clung to her denial, insisting, "He just made a mistake." "You're brothers. You'll forgive him eventually," but I couldn't. Not this time. Forgiveness felt like betrayal of myself, and I refused to carry their sins just to keep her illusion intact. So I blocked them both. Every number, every account. I packed up her things into a box and left it on her doorstep. I didn't leave a note. I wanted silence to say what words couldn't, and for the first time in a long time, the silence felt like mine. Still, I knew healing wouldn't be quick, and the scars would stay. But I also knew something else. I was finally done being their scapegoat. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt myself piece by piece. At first, it felt impossible, like I was walking around with open wounds while everyone else moved on with their lives. But slowly, I realized the betrayal had given me something I'd never had before: clarity. My father's death reminded me how short life really is, and my brother and ex reminded me how cruel people can be when they think you'll never fight back. I started focusing on me for the first time in years. I poured energy into my work, into the friendships I had neglected while trying to hold my relationship together. Friends who stuck by me through the fallout became my lifeline. They told me, "You're better off without them," and for once, I actually believed it. Even distant cousins, people I'd barely spoken to, reached out with support, saying how proud they were that I didn't let the betrayal stay hidden. There were nights when the loneliness hit hard. I'd lie awake thinking about Dad, wishing he could have seen me stand up for myself. But then I remembered, maybe he did. Maybe somewhere he knew his son finally stopped being the one everyone stepped on. My brother lost most of his credibility with the family. My ex became a ghost in the social circles she once thrived in. I didn't need to scream, argue, or demand justice. The truth had already done the work for me. Now when I look in the mirror, I don't see the broken man who once begged for scraps of loyalty. I see someone who survived, someone who chose himself, and as for them, they can spend the rest of their lives explaining themselves to everyone else. Me, I'm done explaining anything. My silence is my closure. My peace is my revenge.